Hello, and thank you for joining me today to learn more about the City of San Diego's Community Development Block Grant Program. My name is Michele Marano, and I am currently a Community Development Coordinator with the Economic Development Department of the City of San Diego. I've been serving my hometown of San Diego in this capacity for almost 20 years, and prior to that, I was an Executive Director of a nonprofit organization for 10 years. So before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items for you today. In the City of San Diego, or serving individuals in the City of San Diego, this may not be the session for you because we're getting into the details of our grant application process. However, that being said, it will give you a general understanding of the Community Development Block Grant Program, and it might help you understand how other cities operate their application process as well. Some slides that you're going to see break all the rules of presentations. They are very text heavy. I don't plan on reading those to you. I really want those to be available to you as a resource when you refer back to this presentation in the materials. It does have some live links that you'll be able to access for registration on certain websites, as well as resources for the City of San Diego. So again, please don't feel like you need to take notes throughout this process, as the PowerPoint will be available to you. And again, there are some very text-heavy slides that will give you quite a bit of resources. And because we won't have an opportunity for questions during this process, I will address how to forward your questions to me and my team as questions develop throughout the course of the next year. So with that, let's go ahead and begin. This is an overview of the presentation itself. We'll be talking about how we can align your mission and goals with the city's mission and goals. We'll define what CDBG, or Community Development Block Grants, are. We'll talk about how the city evaluates the organizational capacity of our nonprofit partners and what we look for in project proposals. We'll give you some tips and tricks for successfully receiving a CDBG grant allocation from the City of San Diego, and then we'll talk about what next steps are in our overall application process. So the first thing I'd like you to consider for the rest of our time together today is, as we discuss these requirements and as you consider projects that you may consider proposing for CDBG funds, just consider not only the specific requirements of the program, but how does your organization's mission align with our city's goals? Because again, it's always good for you to consider funding a program that fits within your mission and not try to develop something that just meets the requirements of our program. So with that, the City of San Diego has a strategic plan, and it defines its mission as to effectively serve and support our community. So very general. And our vision is to be a world-class city for all. We could not provide world-class services to our residents without partners such as nonprofits like yourself. And I went too fast. There we go. Our vision is, goodness, my computer is going forward. My apologies again. The first time we're working on this, so thank you for your patience. The goals of the strategic plan is to provide high quality public services, work in partnership with our communities, and create and sustain resilient, economically prosperous city. So again, continue to think of those as we go through the rest of the presentation today. So what is CDBG? It's the Community Development Block Grant Program through the federal government. The primary objective of this program is to improve living environments, expand economic opportunities, and provide decent housing for low and moderate income residents in areas. And really that underlined section is the most important part of this program. Has been one of the longest running federal entitlement programs offered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. It's been running since 1974. The regulations can be found in 24 Code of Federal Regulations, parts 570. So if you're so inclined, feel free to read those and geek out on the requirements. It's been designed to be flexible, so there are many eligible activities under this program, and I will go ahead and define those later on in this presentation. But it really is tailored to meet the needs of specific communities. So it can be made to match the needs of our neighborhoods, of our communities, and it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of program. With the City of San Diego, we do have 3 overarching documents that we submit to HUD when we are talking about our entitlement funds, and CDBG is an entitlement program. I'm going to be saying that a lot. So entitlement programs mean that the funds are allocated to a city based on a formula that is established by federal regulation. So the city doesn't have to apply for these funds from the federal government on an annual basis. They are appropriated by Congress, and so they are subject to an annual appropriation and approval by Congress, but we do not have to apply for them. So with that, there are 3 documents that we submit to HUD. One is the Consolidated Plan, which is a 5-year document, and it tells the federal government what the city is planning to do with these funds over the course of the next 5 years. So our current document covers fiscal year 20, which we're in right now, through fiscal year 24. And it essentially, again, it says to HUD what we're going to do. Then there's an annual action plan. The action plan discusses 1 year at a time. So based on our 5-year goals, our 5-year document, what are we going to do over the course of the next year? The fiscal year 20 is the action plan that we're in right now. Our fiscal year 21 document will start July 1st of 2020, and it's also available on the city's webpage. And then on an annual basis, we also have something called a Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER. And that's a very long name for basically telling HUD this is our progress over the last year. So the 5-year document, the Consolidated Plan, says what we're going to do. The action plan tells HUD how we are going to do what we said we're going to do. So it talks about the individual projects, the dollar amounts going to each project, the outcomes that we anticipate. And then the final document, the CAPER, shows HUD that we did what we said we were going to do. So it tells HUD these are the actual dollars that were spent. These were the actual outcomes, and how close did we get to our estimates. These documents are all available online, and if you're interested in partnering with the city, I would definitely recommend reading at least the action plan or perusing it and the CAPER, because you can see other projects that have been funded in the past and their success rates and their outcome measures. The Consolidated Plan also lists our goals. So again, when we talk about proposing projects and considering your mission of your organization, you'll want to consider the city's mission, values, as well as the Consolidated Plan goals, because the Consolidated Plan goals are very specific to the funds we receive from the federal government. And these goals discuss everything from affordable housing, providing small business and support to local entrepreneurs, assisting with employment and workforce development opportunities, and investing in public facilities and critical infrastructure. It also talks about assisting individuals experiencing homelessness, investing in community services that promote equity and serve vulnerable populations, as well as providing impactful nonprofit facility improvements to provide either new or increased access to programs. And we'll talk about that in a little more detail later on as well. The Consolidated Plan also talks about looking through the lens of 3 guiding strategies. And we really do, when we're evaluating projects, look at how those projects or programs might fit into one of these guiding strategies. The first one is inclusive economic growth. We are, as a city, are looking to reduce poverty through better access to jobs, education, transportation, and employment support. We're also looking at economic resiliency and sustainability. And whether in the local economy or small business or individual households, we are really looking to make investments that will help recover, withstand, or avoid change in the environment. And this can be caused by economic downturns, loss of industry, natural disasters, or even medical emergencies like we're facing right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. Uh, the emergency programs that our city implemented in response to that emergency are an example of the types of economic resiliency and sustainability programs and projects that we're looking to invest in. And then finally, catalytic community investment. These would be impactful projects to address needs of vulnerable populations. And these can be services as well as infrastructure, facility developments. Any CDBG project or Community Development Block Grant project must meet one of three national objectives. These are defined by federal regulation. They are low and moderate income benefit, slum and blight, and urgent need. And I'm going to go in reverse order here. So urgent need is basically in response to a major catastrophe, such as a flood or earthquake that threatens the community's residents. The community's other resources may be depleted and other federal programs may not be sufficient to cover all the losses, and that's when community development block grants can be invested in services that address urgent need. There's also slum and blight. That has its roots in the urban renewal program that was blended with the community development block grant program back in 1974. And it really focuses on improving or removing blighted properties and making infrastructure investments. And then finally is the low and mod benefit. According to regulations, 70% of our funds must be spent on this outcome, on this national objective. The City of San Diego has historically focused 100% of its funds in this category or in this national objective. So that has been the primary focus of the city over the course of the last several decades. You can meet the national objective by several different ways. You can serve low and moderate income persons. You can meet it by offering services in a low and moderate income area. The area would be primarily residential, and at least 51% of the residents in the area would be low and moderate income according to the most recent census. You can serve limited clientele. So the clientele that you're providing services to would be low and moderate income. They would be direct services to a specific group of people rather than anyone in a particular area. You would also document the services that you're providing to those individuals. So you could document their income level, their demographics, and at least 51% of the clients served would be low and moderate income. There's also another way to meet that category, and that would be if you're serving presumed low and moderate income individuals. Those are individuals where 100% of your services would be provided to this category, and they're defined by federal regulation as abused children, battered spouses, elderly who age 62 and over, severely disabled adults, homeless individuals, illiterate adults, and persons living with HIV/AIDS, and migrant farm workers. So if 100% of your services are being provided to those individuals, you would not need to document that their income levels or that 51% of your clients are low and moderate income. The other two opportunities to meet this national objective are if you're providing housing to low and moderate income households, or you're offering jobs to low and moderate income individuals. Again, documentation would be the key in meeting any of these obligations. And we will hold future workshops, and we also offer technical assistance opportunities to our partners to help them achieve these goals. So the next part of our process is pre-screening for capacity for an organization. This is really where we start to get into our how do you apply for CDBG grants within the city of San Diego. And it's a two-phase process. That part one is a request for qualifications. So you'll hear me say this a lot, RFQ, request for qualifications. Phase two is a request for proposals, or RFP. In the request for qualifications portion of the process, we're looking at your organization as a whole. Are you ready to contract with the city of San Diego? Do you have the capacity to to receive federal funds? And then the RFP is what program or service is your organization proposing during the contract period? In the request for qualifications, what we are looking for is, can we partner with you? Do you have the programmatic and fiscal organizational capacity to receive funds? What is your past experience, your track record? What type of controls do you have in place for administering funds? And what are the alignment of the goals and objectives of your organization with the cities? We're basically focusing on your organization's characteristics. Some of the documentation that's required is to provide your address and contact information, a list of your board of directors, location of your programs or projects that you offer now, the type of communities you serve in your experience, and what's your mission statement. Generally speaking, the RFQ, or request for qualifications process or application, is pretty straightforward. There are some registration and status requirement documentations that we will be looking for in this process as well. The general requirements are listed here, and the ones in blue will likely be required for any city funding source that you're looking to access. The orange boxes there are really specific to the community development block grant process within the city of San Diego. So again, we are looking for your articles of incorporation. What is your employer identification number, your DUNS number, and the registration at sam.gov. That helps us to know if you've been debarred from receiving federal funds. We're also going to be looking for your federal letter of determination from the IRS to show that you are a nonprofit organization, as well as your state tax determination letter. And then with any nonprofit organization in the state of California, you're required to register with the Attorney General's Registry of Charitable Trusts. So we will be looking for active status in that as well. These next few pages are just further details of those requirements, and they provide the web addresses where you can get more information, as well as check your own organization status with those registries. So I'll just kind of skip through those for you to refer back to later. One of the other elements that we're looking for in the request for qualifications is your internal controls. We're not getting into the details of your fiscal policies or your procurement policies at this stage in the game, but we are asking that you start to consider those during this process. So some of the elements that you should be considering in your internal control policies are that no single person should have the sole authority over all the steps of your financial transactions. You want to outline your roles and responsibilities within your organization, and understand that we will be requiring written procedures and policies if you are funded as an organization. And a lot of the courses that are offered through the Nonprofit Academy help you prepare for these internal controls and policy documents. And again, some of the other certifications that you'll be asked to demonstrate at this stage in the application process are that you're certifying that you have a drug-free workplace, that you will comply with the Civil Rights Act, and you have ADA compliance in your facilities, that you are understand conflict of interest policies with the City of San Diego. So again, this slide has got a lot of text on it. But it's something that we just want to make you aware. We're kind of inoculating you now that these are some of the requirements of applying for funds with the City of San Diego. There is also one other element in the request for qualifications process. We do require audited financial statements for the latest fiscal year that has been completed prior to the application, and or a tax return for the latest calendar year. I shouldn't say or, it's and. And again, a lot of text here. I think the bottom line is that only one of these forms of financial audit would be submitted. So you will either have audited financial statements for the most recently ended fiscal year, or you will have a program or single audit that is applicable if you've expended $750,000 more or more in federal funds in the most recently completed fiscal year. So if you're a smaller organization and you are not expending more than $750,000 in federal funds in a single fiscal year, then you would be looking at submitting your annual audited financial statements along with your application in the RFQ. And the reason why we do this is because our community development block grants are a reimbursement process. And so we want to make sure that your organization has the operational capacity to fund your operations while you're waiting for reimbursement from the City of San Diego. So we look at your audited financial statements and we look at your cash balance in those audited financial statements. That cash balance is multiplied by 4, and as long as it meets the minimum of the requirements established by our City Council, which is $50,000 for most public services and economic development programs, or $100,000 for most capital kind of facility improvement programs, as long as you meet that minimum cash balance, then you're eligible to move on to the request for proposal phase of the application. There are a lot of questions about what is considered cash, what is considered, why do we have it multiplied by 4? If you'd like to get into those details, I'm happy to answer those in a follow-up conversation with your organization. But again, it's something where you really just need a minimum cash balance on your audited financial statements of $12,500 for budgeting purposes. And this is really just a visual way of saying what I just said, which is the 3-month cash reserve recommendation. And it kind of explains it in a little more detail, excuse me, that month 1, you're spending the funds. So say you're spending your funds on your services that you're providing to clients in July. In August, you would submit receipts and documentation of those expenditures to the city. So July, you make the expense. August, you submit the request for reimbursement, and then by September, you're receiving the reimbursement that you of the expenses that you made in July. So we just want to make sure that for August and September, you still have enough cash to continue to operate while you're waiting for those reimbursements. Some common disqualifiers for organizations. Really at this point, most of the disqualification is happening automatically through our online application process. But what we have seen recently are simply not having audited financial statements, or not submitting a single audit when it was required. So when the organization was spending more than $750,000, or just not having the correct or complete registrations with the state of California. And so those are really easy to correct, and anticipate now for upcoming application processes or phases. And so I would really encourage you all to go back to your organizations and make sure that your Department of Justice registry is up to date and your sam.gov registry is up to date, that you have a DUNS number. Those are things that you know that they're going to be required by the City of San Diego. And so go ahead and take care of them now so that you're not having to wait and worry about that when the requests for qualifications are announced. So now that we've determined that you're a qualified organization through the request for qualifications process, you're a safe investment of public funds for the City of San Diego, we can get to the fun part. So we know you're safe. So now we get to the part of what is the project or program that you want to propose to us? What are you asking for us to fund? So we're in phase 2 now. We know you're qualified, and now we're looking to see what are the details of your projects. And that is the request for proposals. And again, we post due dates for these on our website. We provide detailed instructions, and we always have technical workshops during this phase. And during this phase, it's usually late fall, early winter, and we're looking for you to describe the scope of your project, outline the schedule, state the amount of funds that you're asking for, and list any other funding sources that you have from say donations or foundations or operating capital from any other source. We also want to see the uses of those funds. Are you proposing to use CDBG funds for only payroll expenses, or are you looking to spend CDBG funds on direct client service delivery? And then we are asking for additional supporting documents regarding your readiness, your project readiness. So say, for example, if it's a construction project, we want to see maybe bids that you've received for the services, or permitting applications that have been completed. So I'm going to go very, very quickly over the types of services that are eligible. I mentioned earlier that the Community Development Block Grant Program is very flexible, and it has a variety of different types of services and eligible programs. And so I'll just highlight those very quickly. The first one is public services. So this is our most competitive subject area. We are limited by federal regulation to 15% of our CDBG budget on an annual basis can be invested in these types of projects. We have a council policy in San Diego that requires a specific dollar amount right off the top of $1.318 million goes directly to homeless programs. And so what we have left, we are able to invest in public services that provide direct assistance to low and moderate income clients. Our minimum allocation for organizations is $50,000 to help support these types of projects. And the two highlighted here are Mama's Kitchen on the left, which is a meal delivery service, and Reality Changers, which is a youth college prep service. The next slide shows a lot more detail in the types of eligible activities. And again, I won't read through this, but it's meant to be something that is a resource for you later on in this process. And again, you would be required to document the income eligibility and demographic data in your case files for the clients that you're serving under this category. The next category is our community and economic development category. And this is our main focus at this point is for micro enterprise assistance. So this would be a nonprofit organization that is providing technical assistance to micro enterprise businesses, which are businesses with 5 or fewer employees, and the owner of the business is an employee. So pictured here are January and James, kind of in the back corner of the photo on the left. They received a loan from our partner organization, Exione, during fiscal year 19, and the loan helped cover startup costs to open their storefront and also supported 2 jobs. The business offers yoga and fitness classes, and the space also includes a boutique which sells natural beauty projects and plants. So this is an example of a micro enterprise that received assistance with CDBG funds. And again, eligible activities can include commercial facade improvements, micro enterprise, and the outcome measures are the limited clientele, so the business owner of the micro enterprise, and the established or expanded business. Another category is providing nonprofit assistance for capacity building projects or facility improvements. They can either be with the facility itself or with multifamily housing rehabilitation. The minimum allocation here is $100,000, so the organization receiving these funds would have to have a little bit more in their cash reserves or cash balance in their audited financial statements in order to access these types of projects. They're a little more advanced. There are quite a few procurement processes and regulations with our construction projects, and so a little bit more of a developed nonprofit organization I think would be required in order to access these funds. But the one on the far right is an example of La Maestra converting a file room basically to a CT scanning suite. And then the Jacob Center for Neighborhood Innovation did a creek restoration project with CDBG funds. And again, some of the eligible activities include ADA improvements, health and safety, hazard remediation, and then with multi-unit residential, you could be rehabbing or doing any sort of not construction, but rehabilitation of multi-unit family housing. And then we have single family housing rehabilitation is also available if a nonprofit has ownership of single family homes or is working to provide single family housing rehab. Habitat for Humanity is an example of that. I won't read through that for you. And then the final category is sustainability. This is also an eligible expenditure under our CDBG program. Grid Alternatives is an example. They provide rooftop solar installation for low and moderate income homeowners. We can also fund water efficiency programs and transit resiliency programs. And again, I am going too fast. See, these are some resources available to you. Again, a lot of text, but wanted to make you aware of the various program resources we have on our website. There is also I'll show you the link to the ED Grants page in a few more slides, but there is a resources tab there with PDFs of many of the information here on the slide, as well as there's a frequently asked questions tab. Also, I would recommend, if you haven't already, go to our CDBG at sandiego.gov webpage and sign up for our email blasts. We send out emails at least monthly, if not more, and you'll know when we have our meetings, when we have items going to City Council, when we're making announcements for trainings or workshops. It's definitely worth your while to get those emails so that you're well informed of what's coming up in the future. This slide I threw in just for fun, because who doesn't want to hear about insurance? But it's something that if you are awarded CDBG funds, these will be the insurance requirements for your contract. So there are commercial general liability requirements with a $1 million minimum per occurrence. There's automobile liability insurance as well as workers' comp. I'm throwing this in there because there are costs associated with these types of insurance policies. So as you are considering whether or not to apply for CDBG funds, make sure that you're including the costs of these policies in your budget so that it's not a surprise later on in the process. There are also additional insured requirements so that the City of San Diego is listed as an additional insured. It would cover the city, its officers, officials, agents, employees. We have samples of these types of documents in our operating manual. And so if your insurance provider or agent is not aware of what this would look like, we have specific examples that you're able to provide to them and say, this is what we want or need. And here is the ED Grants webpage that I was just talking about. If you have any interest at all in applying for CDBG funds through the City of San Diego, I recommend that you go to the website listed at the top of this slide and look to the resources tab as well as the FAQs. There are videos and screen-by-screen shots of how to register an organization in ED Grants and how to submit a request for qualifications response. Those are critical, and I would really recommend that you take a look at those if you have any interest at all. I think registering your organization as early as possible in ED Grants is definitely the best tip I could give you. Become familiar with how it works so that you are not sitting a half an hour before a submittal deadline trying to figure out how to enter the system without a password. Choose one person to be the lead contact for your organization. Definitely read our handbooks, our FAQs, our resources before contacting city staff with questions. Take advantage of the opportunities for help. Like I said, we have technical assistance sessions, office hours. We have even hosted computer labs where we have you come in and work right in front of us so we can help you and walk you through a process. Take advantage of those. The other is to start the process early and allow enough time to review your submissions. And something that has always been recommended by our Consolidated Plan Advisory Board is to have someone proofread your submittals before you submit anything. For me, it's definitely see if you can have someone who's not familiar with your program proofread it or review it. We all get so very involved in our own lingo and our own jargon that we forget that there are volunteer community members reviewing these applications and scoring them. And so if you have your cousin or your neighbor or your spouse or your adult child read these applications before you submit them, it helps to really see if what you've written is easily understood. And then finally, if you do have questions, never hesitate to email us. Again, this email address, cdbg@sandiego.gov, is the best way to reach us. As I'm sure you can imagine, we're all working from home right now, but the cdbg@sandiego.gov email box is accessible to about 8 or 9 of our staff members at any given time. It is definitely the best way to get a quick answer. When you send an email to a specific staff person, if that staff person is unavailable or is in training, it may take a day or two for them to respond, where if you're sending to the CDBG email address, you will likely get a response within a business day. So our next steps, we are entering contracts now for fiscal year 21. So contracts will start July 1st for our fiscal year 21. And then in a few short months, we're going to be looking at our fiscal year 22 cycle. So around September, October of this year, we will be looking at starting our request for qualifications process for contracts that would start July 1st of 2021. Then we go into the request for proposals process, which usually concludes around December, January timeframe. Then we submit all qualified applications to our Consolidated Plan Advisory Board. They're a board of volunteers, 9 members, 1 from each council district. They read and score every single application based on the scoring criteria. Those scores are ranked in descending order, and then funding recommendations are made based on those ranks. And then in the spring, usually around the March-April timeframe, City Council is asked to approve those scores. So right around this time next year, or a little bit earlier, City Council will be looking at making recommendations for funds that would start the July to July 1st, 2021 timeframe. Also, for your own reference, CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, aren't the only funding source available to nonprofits in the city of San Diego. There are a variety of programs available to you as our partners. There's a webpage linked here that lists a variety of funding opportunities and the general requirements for each of those, as well as nonprofit capacity building programs. So I'd encourage you to look at those. If federal funds aren't the best option for your organization, there are state funds available here, as well as some more flexible funds that city council offices have to invest in nonprofit partners. So again, I would encourage you to look at this website. And then finally, I just wanted to remind you that we are all here to serve you and assist you. We appreciate your partnership. We know that we could not achieve some of the services and programs for our communities without your help. We really do have a dedication and commitment to people, integrity, excellence, and service. And I do want to remind you that please do not hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions or would just simply like additional information. And thank you for that. I appreciate your patience and time. We do have a potential upcoming short, very brief notice of funding availability or request for qualifications with regard to the CARES Act funds that came down from the federal government. And those projects would be very specific to responding to preparing for or preventing COVID-19. When we have that available, we'll be announcing that through our email blast as well as our website. So again, if you aren't already on our eBlast registration page, make sure you do that at cdbg@sandiego.gov so you can become aware of those opportunities as they're made available. And I really do appreciate your time and patience today as I work through my slides. And my name again is Michele Marano. Do feel free to call me or email me directly if you have very specific questions, and I would be happy to assist. And thank you very much.